Sometimes it is difficult to get a grasp on what a game is. Deathloop was announced in June 2019 by Arcane Studios. And from that point on, you wouldn't be laughed at if you felt that you were in some kind of loop of your own, trying to guess and re-guess and re-guessy guess what the hell the game was actually going to be. Was it tightly timed, a first-person shooter requiring a consistent adhering to a schedule, or was it something else? It looked a bit like Dishonored, then a bit like Prey, and then later a bit like No One Lives Forever. It was at the best a mystery. Now it's coming, exclusive at launch for the PS5 on console and the PC. Spoilers will be blurred for this. Also, stay tuned to discuss the voting process for the next game to get reviewed. So let's sit back and see if stuck inside the boots of a cantankerous killer named Colt, cursed to repeat the same day of his life until he can figure out a way to break out of that loop, is any fun, or if it's all just that amalgamation that we suspected originally. I'm Carrick with ACG. These are reviews that aren't 2 minutes long or filled with sponsored bullcrap, and you are faced with the question, is the death loop yours or the enemy's? Subscribe if you get a chance. Graphics are up first. Deathloop retains a good deal of the look and feel of Dishonored. It just does. The locations reflect exactly what you would expect from Arcane and from a world stuck in a loop of time where the world's worst roommate and an interior designer had a baby, and so they just go into every place and fling shit all over the place. Each place you go to is a consistent, almost Escher-like exploration of what the from dead-end alleys to chairs in the middle of streets and a weird party location that, in some time periods, no one is even at. At first, what can look like terrible level design is explained by the narrative as the reaction of those people within the game world who have cares of yesterday, but they're forgotten because yesterday's today and tomorrow's another yesterday just waiting to be, well, lived through. This kind of experience now but explained later situation is reflected in every moment of Deathloop, but graphically, it's the most noticeable. What is a shame here is that some of this work in the art department can't really be seen. You're either pegging a rolling pin-sized bullet through someone wearing a fox mask like 100 yards out, or sneaking up on them, anus height and crouch mode as you try to stab them in the back. While the 4 districts are somewhat defined to have their own vertical sprawling or horizontally spread sub-districts, the shared art aesthetic is closer to a 1960s filter. Shade carpets and unshaven privates, where bush could mean a couple different things depending on where you are. There are some pretty good weather effects as well. Blizzards, there's different lighting for each of the locations depending on when you arrived, as well as different enemy placements in some of those. I also adore that Splinter Cell text cell effect where writing on the world happens around you. It's ESP graffiti pushing you with each puzzle moment as a graft into this time wound that the island's created. You're consistently being warned up ahead of ambushes that never happen or telling you everything is safe when it's not. That's the questions that the game offers, but it delivers some of those graphically, which I think is very cool. The animations, on the other hand, not so much. They are very basic, and the texture work is low detail at best, which is ultimately really disappointing, as this is on just the PS5 and the PC, and not, at least as far as we know, last generation. Locations suffer less than the enemies, though, and exploring and finding some cubbyhole or secret way into a location is fairly awesome. Easily the best parts are the location, travel, and traversal in Deathloop. No HUD gameplay is almost impossible here. Special powers don't have particular hand gestures or coloring, so knowing which one of them you have outfitted seems pretty much impossible without HUD-like effects being on. Highlighting the different powers would have been particularly nice, especially as most of the game you're running around like you stapled 2 arms to your chest and they're pointing in front of you anyway. Graphically, those spell effects or ESP effects are done pretty well. They're not really overt or in your face, and the main reason for that is, of course, the stealth dynamic that the game does seem to push. Explosions and gunfire and those effects are done well, but again, not over the top. They're pretty much exactly that power component and that look that you would expect. Speaking of expectations, we all expect this to perform well. PC has some good settings. Field of view, so you can turn it from 60 to like 110. You have ultra-wide support. You've got super resolution and a ton of other options. This results in a game that frame for frame is a great deal better looking than the console PS5 version, like for like in performance. Even with the console exposing 3-level performance settings for you, which is performance, visual, and visual plus ray tracing, but pretty much locked at 30 FPS. The console version always looks a little bit blurry compared to everything else. Now, the PC doesn't require a small system to get this running. It does require a GTX 1060, and I think it's an i5 8400 for the very lowest of settings. And to be brutally honest, Deathloop on the highest settings isn't really the biggest and greatest looking game of all time. However, to get ray tracing in this game, you need a 3080 and a friggin' i7 1090, I believe, for this. So be prepared for those performance requirements. You have a lot of settings there that will allow you to get your FPS back. One thing that we hope, it doesn't matter what hardware we have it on, is the audio being good.
What's up with the oxygen?
Stand on neck, steady and bubble.
Uh-huh.
This is a very jazzy soundtrack. John Barry, it's styled in his fashion during the action moments, especially ramping up that heat. It's got raw percussion beats overlaid with staccato horns coming in and flaring up as the battles ebb and flow around you. And then when everybody's dead, this soft melody plays that informs the gamer of that. It's not for everyone's liking. While the exploratory tracks you hear are subtle, they're left to ebb sort of in the back of your brain like a burner on low. There's also a good deal of downtime where exploration music is just the wind whipping around you or the crunch of your feet on the edge of a cliff, and that's all you're going to hear. Now, gunfire and the assorted explosions and the Esper-like electricity and otherwise in the ESP moments is not bad. Hats off to the trail of sounds that the machine gun spits out as well, with the parts all jiggling around. It's like you always are to remember that that thing could fall apart at any one moment. While the game doesn't specifically call out Tempest 3D that I could find in the perks for PS5 development, they do have settings for 3D audio in the audio section for headphones. While there is some discrete location adjustments here, I did find that strangely enough, Deathloop falls into the same issues that Dishonored 2 did. The characters in the game, the NPCs in particular, have a tendency to talk a lot. And it's sometimes hard to tell if they're right next to you, 40 feet from you, below you, above you, or behind you. The game at times has this odd fall off where a character talking can be heard incredibly well regardless of where they are. Unfortunate, but not game breaking, and occurs with headphones plugged into controller or the DAC as well as home theater. And again, this is much less about differentiating the direction in which an enemy comes from and their fall off in their distance. Two completely different things. Again, a lot of those have environmental impacts on the voices. Very cool. It's just that the mixing seemed pretty far off, especially when you get into a location with 7 or 8 characters. All of them talking, it can be a little bit garbled, and it feels like that layering starts to fall apart at that point. What does not fall apart is the audio and the voice work. Colt is done really well. He starts somewhere around the level of what the fuck, and then it's almost total amnesia, except he's a human, which means somehow, like a prehistoric caveman shot forward, he can still figure out how to aim a gun. Voice actors strike a good balance between WTF moments mixed with GOAT moments of just annihilating enemies in a hail of gunfire, using each body as a bit of a puzzle piece to fill that jigsaw of just what's occurring in this Isle of Hell. And another way you find out what's occurring is, of course, death notes. Instead of clamping down on that health bar that you just walked past to hear a message, this character decided, hey, I'm going to leave a recording of myself on my old Zune, so here are my top 5 foods I love. Those death notes in the various different recordings are done really well. I was quite surprised at the tone in which they were delivered, whether they were high, whether they were bored, whether they were dying. It was delivered very professionally, and it sounded like a character in that particular moment. Speaking of moments, that's what gameplay is. A bunch of awesome moments mixed together, or not so awesome ones. Let's jump into the story just for a second. See this crab here? He's fucked. That's you in Deathloop, at least at the start. You wake up on a beach as Colt. No clue what's happening, no clue what to do until you get a call from someone named Juliana who informs you that you somehow are going against the Deathloop, and now everyone in the game world is out to kill you. To find out what's what, you explore the island's 4 districts at 4 distinct times during a repeating day, all with the ultimate goal of killing the 8 bewitched ravers that are holding it into the same shitty Monday time loop like homicidal Groundhog Days, except instead of the groundhog seeing their shadow, Colt sees the ocean and feels that inevitability of the grind each time he dies. If you think of the movie Memento and how it reflects the idea of a person knowing something but without knowing what they know and having to leave visual reminders of themselves, and then the butterfly effect shows that a single action can have untold results on the future, Deathloop is both of those smashed together with guns and superpowers as a first-person stealth action game. Colt can follow leads like a lead-footed detective, flooring it to his enemies' strongholds in the world and trying to take each one of them down and gather their power called slabs. Or He can follow leads relating to his powers and weapons, just free flowing it through locations and exploring and getting those power ups. As he collects information from discussions, notes around the world, or recordings, they're carried forward as information to the next loop. While the island is split within those districts and those time frames, time only passes to the next frame or the next day if you die, which you can die twice or go fully back to base. The mystery of the history here is trying to answer the rhyme of time and what it all means. Because the entire story is its own puzzle, and at first, it makes no sense. But where the game gets interesting is where the story changes as you begin to do things in the world that change the story and adjust it, and then flow into the next day. Just a couple things. For example, what feels like an impossible task at first of taking out 8 enemies all in the span of one day starts becoming a tangible reward as subtle changes you make to the world will make that a bit easier, and information you have will do so as well. Gameplay itself feels a lot like a mix of Prey and Dishonored, meaning some up close, lots of listening and sneaking, and a hell of a lot of stealth and upgrading your knowledge about the events happening on the island. But that's not all that you want to take from day to day to day. You can infuse items to attune them to you and carry them over. Infusing costs residuum, which is an energy you find about a couple missions into the game, and it comes from items around the game world that resonate with the energy of the loops themselves, or when killing one of the 8 visionaries or Juliana when she jumps into your game on a hunt. She will sometimes drop slabs, but all of the characters will have some kind of this energy. By spending it, you can infuse the item and they stay with you through the loops. These needed items can usually be sacrificed for the same energy as well if you find something that you don't want to keep. But if you do want to keep it, you can apply it to the trinkets on your body. You have 3 normal sections and 1 special section for these trinkets. They're varying levels of power, a little bit like you've seen in any other game, with different colors attuning to different powers, allowing for double jumping, a larger life bar, stealthier movement, hacking things faster, making them explode, and so on. Each time you tear down one of the visionaries, you upgrade your related slab as well. The slabs themselves, and they resolve down into basically going berserk, invisibility, teleporting, force tethering, and force throw. Each of those has 4 levels total that can be added to the power itself. For example, when killing enemies, you leave some traces behind that enemies can see, and if they find it in time, they notice you. But with the 2nd level of invisibility slab, on that, you can make it go away, or the ability to not only force leap, but also trade places with the enemy if you upgrade that. So while maybe just dropping a mine at your feet and then trading places with that enemy, now the enemy has transferred directly to where the mine is. It's not all about the powers, though. You also have a small assortment of weapons, each coming in the expected common, uncommon, and so on variety, with higher level weapons having their own special skills, like every shot causing poison clouds or slowing down enemies or hitting both their power and their health. And you can outfit those with trinkets that will upgrade them. Be aware there isn't really anything that's world-shattering here. It's faster reloads, it's a larger clip, and so forth. Though later on you do get some powerful ones. It's just not something that's going to be completely shocking. Regardless whether you go about it with exploration or killing, the first thing you're going to notice almost right away is that Deathloop doesn't leave bodies around. It's easy to see that no bodies left behind is a mistake in gameplay, as a vast gulf that removes that desire to go slow. But Deathloop's idea rings pretty true to me. As you continue and no bodies left behind means you can push forward a bit more aggressively. It means that now you can take a few more chances. And what are chances but possible successes? It's that risk that I think a lot of gamers can slip into comfortably in games like this. I didn't have a problem with that, but I can see a lot of people who like stealth games are going to find it a little bit nonchalant. And that might be because all these powers in the stealth need to pay off when the combat gets hot and heavy, and Deathloop stutters a couple times here. First, I like the recoil of the guns. I felt that the machine guns themselves felt really good. They just slopped around maniacally. I enjoyed the shotgun. In fact, I enjoyed most of them, even though there's not a lot of guns here. But under the surface, there was always this little bit of noticeable lag on the PS5 version. This might also be why it offers a number of options for aim assistance. Now, PC doesn't suffer from that part nearly as much, but it does suffer from the same thing that crops up at times while playing this game. It's not as visceral as Dishonored, nor as engaging as Prey in its various uses of the powers, even leveled up. That's fine. In a way, it's its own thing, but there's this old-fashioned last-gen feel to the game that can't be shaken off, and the main, absolutely easy way to notice this is the AI. It's not always dumb, and at times it can hit you from very far away, but when this thing loses its shit, it falls apart. Explosions can go off 10 feet from enemies, they won't engage you. You can Spartan kick someone off a bridge, they'll land directly behind their best friend, they won't alert. No settings allow for adjusting this, and I wish there were. The only times that you may die in Deathloop is if you push too hard, And in a way, I guess that fits the fiction, especially later on when even more data is delivered to you. As you die, the death loop continues. Juliana, your main opponent and another person who can remember the past, has powers somewhat like you. She comes to hunt you down, but her AI fails every single time. There's almost no time that I wasn't killing her or she was trying to kill me that she didn't catch on some steps or ultimately betray just how supposedly excellent she was by running back and forth against a wall. While I was switching out hands, double wielding and mixing and matching with the powers, that all helped and made it fun. And if you're into a power trip kind of game, you won't be that bothered by this, but throughout a good deal of the game, risk is not really reflected in any real way. And you can feel Deathloop trying to balance that out. The broader strokes of homicidal homies bent on sending you into that one last dirt nap, and your own requirements of deleting 8 X-Men wannabes, each holed up in their own magical haciendas, reflecting a bit of their own personalities in the construction. The story continues to be doled out. You get more information. It's probably the best, most interesting part of the game, but the gameplay itself never really steps up to feel incredibly unique. One of the few games, though, that I did find myself reading every single thing or listen to every single death note in the hopes of harnessing all this story into something cohesive. And I did, and that's very cool. I also love that you can change the entire feel of the game if you want something closer to Dishonored. Just attach trinkets like those that impact your slide length, the speed of movement, as well as one that boosts your overall power level. Or if you want something that's a little bit closer to Prey, then you can put trinkets on that allow for you to do more up-close damage, make you move much faster when crouched, and aim down sights a little bit faster when you need to pull off that really quick headshot. And you may too, because like I said, in the multiplayer version, a player, another person on your friends list, can invade you as Juliana in some levels and try to take you out. You don't have to turn it on, of course. The game will just use the same character from the story, but I did think that was pretty cool and offers a little bit of a human challenge if you want it. And there's more challenge here, and that's in the bugs. The first, and this was prior to this last patch, I had infused all the slabs but one. When I got to the last one, I didn't have room in my slab store to hold it without dropping a current one that I had infused. Now, I was informed since it was infused and it's a slab, it should stay regardless, but it didn't, resulting in me losing that slab, all the infused cost, and requiring me to do it all again. Sadly, when I did do that and ran into another issue, and this was post the last patch, 2 times killing visionaries did not drop slabs at all, and that was ultimately disappointing. Nothing I've seen indicates this is supposed to happen, and indeed your lead system indicates it's not supposed to, so most likely the slab got dropped into the world, maybe fell through it. This was also the slab that had vanished, requiring me to, do it again. My own little death loop inside a game called Deathloop. Also, another problem I had on the PS5 version in particular is that the menu would stick. Again, this is the newest version patched up, and it still happened. Options would stop responding for 20, 30, 40 seconds. And I thought, maybe it's a PS5 issue. Tested other games, no issue. Installed the game again, same thing pops up. As a package Deathloop, it can feel awesome, but it always feels a little bit like it's trying to be something else. And that falls apart moments later when it's hurt by enemy AI or the lack of risk and those occasional bugs. That being said, the way it doled out the story and changed things, I was not expecting it to be that enjoyable. It was totally awesome to play those parts. And that brings me to fun factor and the wrap up. An assassination game at its core, you can find a lower number of skills and weapons to be a disappointment, and I would agree with you. I can't lie. I'd say mixing and matching the slabs, like the ability to tether enemies and switch them out or teleporting them to where I was standing, is hilarious, but it never grew into something special. The best moments are when you're using those slabs to slip into the locations undetected, a temporal ninja outfitted with a machete that looks like it was in some ceremonial black magic ritual, getting a little bit more information and trying to unfold this concatenation of different individual moments in times and events and environments that link together to collapse into what appears to be at first utter chaos in its story, but those narrative elements tied together into something I found actually special. Again, I'm a fan of Lost, so maybe that's just me. The larger mystery of the island, that Mobius strip of this endless, lesser island objective, never ends. It's a feeling of Deathloop at its starting. As the game's systems and narrative adjust, you begin to understand that somewhere in front of you isn't just you again curving back, but also possibly you pulling out the world's largest scissors in the future and snipping the shit out of the entire loop. So as you guys know, I rate games on a buy, wait for sale, rent, or never touch it again rating system. This is a wait for a sale. The easy way out of this is for me to go, oh yeah, for fans of blah, 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 but I'm not going to do that. I don't really believe in it. It's true that Deathloop has suffered from identity crisis from the very moment. It plays to the confusion originally. We didn't know what the timer was. We didn't know about the multiplayer aspect, so much so that the developer had to post a lot of mini posts about the game and clarify different things. While that battle may go on forever between Dishonored and, for better or worse, Prey, as those times continue, I do not feel like Deathloop will be mentioned in those discussions. It's just too unfocused. It's undefined. And while I was enamored with the story and the changes in the way things work from time to time, those times became shorter and shorter as the hours I spent grew and grew. And at some point, the Deathloop was simply a term I was using for my own interest. So that's it for me. I hope you liked the video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't, give it a thumbs down. Check out the Patreon. It absolutely helps. You know, YouTube always has issues. The Patreon is the main place. You guys will see Walk in the Walks from me. Also, games are coming up. I want to know what you guys want reviewed. Put it in the comments what game you want reviewed, and I will count them up, and we will get that one on the review list. Hope you guys all have an awesome week. Follow me on Twitter. Follow me on Facebook. Peace out.